Moses was dead, but his influence did not die with him, crossing the Jordan. It was to live on, reproducing itself in the hearts of his people. The memory of that holy, unselfish life would long be cherished, with silent, persuasive power molding the lives of even of those who had neglected his living words. As the glow of the descending sun lights up the mountain peaks long after the sun itself has sunk beneath the hills, so the works of the pure, the holy, and the good shed light upon the world long after the actors themselves have passed away. Their works, their words, their example will live forever. The righteous shall be in everlasting remembrance. Psalms 112 and 6. While they were filled with grief at their great loss, the people knew that they were not left alone. The pillar of cloud rested over the tabernacle by day, and the pillar of fire by night, as assurance that God would still be their guide and helper if they would walk in the way of his commandments. Joshua was now the acknowledged leader of Israel. He had been known chiefly as a warrior, and his gifts and virtues were especially valuable at this stage in the history of his people. Courageous, resolute, and persevering, prompt, incorruptible, unmindful of selfish interests in his care for those committed to his charge, and, above all, inspired by a living faith in God. Such was the character of the man divinely chosen to conduct the armies of Israel in their entrance upon the Promised Land. During the sojourn in the wilderness, he had acted as prime minister to Moses, and by his quiet, unpretending fidelity, his steadfastness when others wavered, his firmness to maintain the truth in the midst of danger, he had given him evidence to his fitness to succeed Moses, even before he was called to the position by the voice of God. It was with great anxiety and self-distrust that Joshua had looked forward to the work before him. But his fears were removed by the assurance of God. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. Unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land which I swear unto their fathers to give them. Every place that the sole of your feet shall tread upon, that have I given unto you. As I said unto Moses, to the heights of Lebanon in the far distance, to the shores of the great sea, and away to the banks of the Euphrates in the east, all was to be theirs. To this promise was added the injunction, only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded. The Lord's direction was, this book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, for then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. The Israelites were still encamped on the east side of Jordan, which presented the first barrier to the occupation of Canaan. Arise had been the first message of God to Joshua. Go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them. No instruction was given as to the way in which they were to make the passage. Joshua knew, however, that whatever God should command, he would make a way for his people to perform. And in faith, the intrepid leader at once began his arrangements for an advance. A few miles beyond the river, just opposite the place where the Israelites were encamped, was the large and strongly fortified city of Jericho. This city was virtually the key to the whole country, and it would present a formidable obstacle to the success of Israel. Joshua therefore sent 2 young men as spies to visit the city and ascertain something as to its population, its resources, and the strength of its fortifications. The inhabitants of the city, terrified and suspicious, were constantly on the alert, and the messengers were in great danger. They were, however, preserved by Rahab, a woman of Jericho, at the peril of her own life. In return for kindness, they gave her a promise of protection when the city should be taken. The spies returned in safety with tidings. Truly the Lord had delivered into our hands all the land. For even all inhabitants of the country do faint because of us. It had been declared to them in Jericho. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when ye came out of Egypt, and what he did unto the 2 kings of the Amorites that were on the other side of Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom ye utterly destroyed. And as soon as we had heard these things, our hearts did melt, neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and in earth beneath. Crossing the Jordan. No better guide than God. If men will walk in the path that God has marked out for them, they will have a counselor whose wisdom is far above any human wisdom. Joshua was a wise general because God was his guide. The first sword Joshua used was the sword of the Spirit, the Word of God. Will men who are handling large responsibilities read the first chapter of Joshua? Do you think that all these charges would have been given to Joshua if there had been no danger of his being brought under misleading influences? It was because the strongest influence were to be brought to bear against his principles of righteousness that the Lord in mercy charged him not to turn to the right hand or to the left. He was to follow a course of strictest integrity. Joshua chapter 1. If there had been no peril before Joshua, God would not over and over again have charged him to be of good courage. But amid all his cares, Joshua had his God to guide him. There is no deception than for man to suppose that in any difficulty he can find a better guide than God, a wiser counselor in any emergency, a stronger defense under any circumstance. Secret of Joshua's success. The Lord had a great work to be done in our world. To every man he has given his work for man to do. But man is not to make man his guide, lest he be led astray. This is always unsafe. While Bible religion embodies the principles of activity and service, at the same time, there's the necessity of asking for wisdom daily from the source of all wisdom. What was Joshua's victory? Thou shalt meditate upon the word of God day and night. The word of the Lord came to Joshua just before he passed over Jordan. This was the secret of Joshua's victory. He made God his guide. Counselors should cherish everything coming from God. Those holding the position of counselors should be unselfish men, men of faith, men of prayer, men that will not dare to rely upon their own human wisdom, but will seek earnestly for light and intelligence as to what is the best manner of conducting their business. Joshua, the commander of Israel, searched the books diligently in which Moses had faithfully chronicled the direction given by God, his requirements, reproofs, and restrictions, lest he should move unadvisedly. Joshua was afraid to trust his own impulses or his own wisdom. He regarded everything that came from Christ, who was enshrouded by the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. God wanted to teach the world through his people. Through his people, Israel, God designed to give to the world a knowledge of his will. His promises and threatenings, his instructions and reproofs, the wonderful manifestation of his power among them, in blessings and obedience for obedience, and judgment for transgression and apostasy. All were designed for the education and development of religious principle among the people of God until the close of time. Therefore, it is important that we acquaint ourselves with the history of the Hebrew host and ponder with care the dealings of God with them. The words which God spoke of Israel to Israel by his Son were spoken for us. Also in these last days, the same Jesus who upon the mount taught his disciples the far-reaching principles of the law of God, instructed ancient Israel from the cloudy pillar and from the tabernacle by the mouth of Moses and Joshua. Religion in the days of Moses and Joshua was the same as religion today. Crossing the Jordan. Joshua chapter 5 and verse 12. And the manna ceased on the morrow, after they had eaten of the produce of the land. Neither had the children of Israel manna any more, but they did eat of the fruit of the land of Canaan that year, crossing the Jordan.